Opening the meeting to the public.
Hey, Chuck.
Hey, Abby, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
We're live.
Yeah.
Hey, we're live, Ab.
Okay, you ready for me to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I call this meeting to order. Number one is to shut my dog up. Number one on the agenda is public comments. Are there any?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We have a member of the public that signed up. It's not necessarily an item on here, but we will call her to say whatever she needs to comment on. And we have another item, item 11, where one of our police sergeants will have a comment on also. So let me call this lady so she can do her public comment. I'll call her from my phone and put her on speaker.
And you saw that Rich has audio. He's here.
Yes, no, I saw. We've got a full quorum.
Okay.
And you reach department advanced practice on either with a patient or on the.
There was no answer, so we can proceed, I guess, to the next item. You're muted, Abby.
Number two on the agenda is consider and take action to elect the chairman of the Civil Service Commission. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Abby.
Is there a second?
I second.
Let's call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, number three on the agenda, consider and take action to elect a vice chairman of the Civil Service Commission. Are there any nominations?
Yeah. I nominate the current vice chairman to remain as vice chairman.
And I second that. That would be Chuck. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you for that vote of confidence.
Number four on the agenda, consider and take action to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 12th, 2021. All those in favor?
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Number five, consider and take action to approve the eligibility list resulting from the entry firefighter examination administered on March 17th, 2021.
Okay, we had a fire exam, and on the board, on their screen is the folks that took the exam. We had 56 folks pass the exam, and with this, we're able to proceed and fill the vacancies that we've got. So recommend approval.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move to approve the eligibility list resulting from the entry firefighter exam administered March 17th, 2021.
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Otherwise, let's move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Richard, you're muted.
Aye.
All those in motion carries. Number six is consider and take action to approve the eligibility list resulting from the police sergeant promotional examination administered on February 22nd, 2021.
Okay. We have the list should be here shortly. Okay, those are the scores based on the civil service exam. We had 4 folks that passed the exam. Right now, we don't have a vacancy, but as soon as we promote for commander, a vacancy will occur at this position. Recommend approval.
Is there a motion?
Yes, sure. I recommend, or I move that we approve the eligibility list for the police sergeant position on the exam that was taken February, whatever that date was, February
22nd.
22nd.
Yeah, I second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Number 7 on the agenda, consider and take action to approve the eligibility list resulting from the fire driver promotional examination administered on February 24th, 2021.
Okay, on this, I want to ask you that later, go back to
Like this?
To the public comments?
no. I was gonna tell you, I didn't hear you guys approve let me see, resulting to action. No, never mind, I'm sorry. On this one, we have the driver's list. This one, we had 2 folks pass the exam, and on these, there's no other assessment, so they'll be promoted based on these scores. Recommend approval.
I move that we approve the eligibility list resulting from the fire driver promotional examination administered on February 24th, 2021. Is there a second?
Second.
Second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 8 on the agenda, consider and take action to administer a promotional exam for fire driver on April 29th, 2021.
And this is the one that I was confused on a minute ago. Even though we fill these vacancies, we'll still have some fire driver vacancies, so we're asking to schedule another exam, so it allows us to fill those vacancies, and we're recommending April 29th as a test date.
I move that we set April 29th to administer a promotional exam for the fire driver. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, and that brings us to number 9. Consider an appeal by fire driver Virgil Garcia of the fire lieutenant promotional examination administered on February 23rd, 2021.
Yes, this gentleman is appealing 3 questions. We have him online. We also have the Evan Mann, who is the union representative who wants to also speak on this. And also available this time, we have the gentleman that prepares the exams for us. And he's actually on the Zoom call also. And before you are the questions. There's question number 18 and 43 and 79. So, I mean, we're ready for, that's what he's appealing on there. On question, he's asking how do you define the, let me look at it on my actual computer. He says, how do you define the outer boundary of the cold zone if it is already in a cold zone? And on that one, oh, I'm sorry, I read the wrong one. this is number 18, has the wrong definition printed. The correct answer was B, 1200. He answered 600. We also have what the test maker responded to that. And we also have what he submitted. He submitted, you can go to that screen that has the attachment. He's, okay, is that one is it. That's what the test maker responded. If we go a little further in his response to us, you'll see what he sent us. You could go back there, Sam.
Correctly apply within TC.
A little bit below that. Yeah, go a little bit below that. He's actually put up a table. Right there. That's what he submitted to us right there. And I don't know, you'd want to explain yourself, Mr. Garcia?
Good afternoon. On this one, the papers, it does have 1200 and 600. It does also say EMT on there. So, and I have it here on 2 pages. My phone.
I just have a question before we even go any further. I'm looking at this chart. Now, this is part of the printed material that was given. This chart is part of that?
Yes. On one page, it has EMT, ECA 600. Then over here, it has EMT 1200.
Oh, where's the one with 1200?
Here, but then it also says EMT, ECA 600.
Okay, I think go up on the screen, Sandra.
Wait, no.
That's too far. I don't know where in the screen. No, I guess go back up. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure where Virgil's talking about. Go up. Well, or we can see what the test maker.
And there
it is.
Oh, there it is.
So, Mr. Ure.
He's on mute.
Bruce, you're in mute, I think.
There we go. Sorry about that. Right. From our perspective, the table outlines if an ECA, because even if you look right above that, it says firefighters with ECA only, and down below it, it says EMT. And so, from our perspective, if you have a ECA only, it's $600, and if you have an EMT, and of course it says it's not cumulative with the ECA, then it's $1,200. So even though it says an EMT ECA, I mean, by definition, down below it, it says EMT, and then also next to by the EMT ECA, it shows that it's firefighters with ECA only, and that's across the board.
Does anybody know why they put EMT there? Because I'm not understanding that.
That's my question is why does our paper say EMT on there in front of ECA and on 2 different pages?
Am I allowed to speak on this, Ethan, at all?
Yes, go ahead.
To bring clarification? Okay, so this is a unique question, and I think part of the issue is the language. I'm sorry?
Identify yourself so that they know who
I'm sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Evan Mann, and I am the president of the Harbinger Professional Firefighters Association. And to bring some insight to this unique question and the way it's worded, there is an issue that we are actually probably going to fix with the collective bargaining contract where we used to have EMT pay, and that was $600 off the bat. And I think initially it reads here EMT/ECA. It should not have read that way. it should have read just ECA, emergency care attendant, or what we have now, which is an EMR, emergency medical responder. And as the question reads, if you had an EMT alone, the argument was, why should an ECA, which is a lesser qualification, get paid the same as an EMT? So in the bargaining, the language is changed to just EMT, and it's $1,200, which is essentially $600 more. And as the question reads, additionally, that could leave room for confusion and interpretation. And although it does have there in parentheses ECA only, and at the bottom, not cumulative with ECA, that the fact that it does say EMT/ECA, that is where the confusion lies. And that was something that should have been, the language should have been changed accordingly in the contract to prevent that confusion.
I have a question. This is Chuck Mattingly, one of the commissioners. So how many applicants that took this exam got this question wrong?
On 18 of the ones that another one that got it wrong. 2 of them got it right.
So 50% got it right, 50% got it wrong. Okay. So what is the gentleman that's making the appeal, Mr. Garcia, what is he asking us to do?
Sir, I'm asking for you to strike the question from the test.
So you don't want to be given credit, you just want to remove the question from the exam completely?
Yes.
Because it was confusing, and is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that what you're stating?
Yes, it's because it has extra words in the paper, and yeah.
All right. And what is this position for? What was this test for, Efren?
This test was for a fire lieutenant.
Okay. And how many people actually passed that exam?
We had 1 person passed it.
Okay. If the commission were to remove this question from the examination, how's that going to affect the other persons?
The other person would still be passing. If we remove this one and we round the score, the way we did the previous one where someone had a 69, it would round to a 70. And I'll have to redo the math to make sure. Last time, Commissioner Newman's the one that did the math for me.
Okay. And how many positions are available?
I think there's actually, I'm not sure, the chief's online. He can probably tell us that.
Yeah, this is Fire Chief Valderas. We don't currently have any lieutenant positions available, but we know that there's going to be 1 individual that's going to be retiring in May, and then additional retirees will be happening. Retirements will be happening within the year that this list is good for.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to let us know about this, Chief? I mean, what do you think is a fair resolution?
I know I was asked this question the last meeting, and actually that's really up to the commission. You know, once the list is certified, then I take that list and I'll go ahead and promote from that list. But the firefighters have a right to appeal any questions, and it's really up to the commission to come up with whatever it is they do come up with. And then after that, I'll take that list and I'll do the promotions from that certified list.
Okay.
Do we discuss here? Efren? Do we just discuss here?
You can discuss, or you could go into executive session if you'd like.
Does anybody care?
May I speak briefly just on this for just 1 minute?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, everyone. This is Evan Mann again, President of Harlingen Professional Firefighters Association. And Commissioner Mattingly, I really appreciate your comment earlier when you asked, how does this affect anyone else who has taken this test if we omit versus award the question? And one of the things I wanted to address today with the commission is last time we had an individual, a member, contest a question. There was a miscommunication in his presentation of the question. And historically in the past, over the several past times we've had this issue, generally speaking, the question was awarded. I spoke to Mr. Fernandez earlier today about this as well. And we just wanted to make sure that when we're deciding whether to omit a question versus award the question, that we ask the commissioners to take that into consideration, how it might affect another individual, because that could cause us problems from a union standpoint later. In this situation, it's unique. Last situation was unique as well. The individual ended up promoting to a driver regardless of whether the question was awarded or omitted, whereas in the past, the last 3 times the question was contested, the points were awarded. This situation is also unique, where I don't think it would affect anyone directly, but however, if there was someone who had a 72 versus a 71 or 73, and for instance, if all of 3 of these questions were omitted and that individual got those right, that would cause problems for us and from a union standpoint, and someone could possibly file a grievance. So that's all I had to say about that, and I respect whatever decision you'll make.
Well,
thank you.
When I look at this question, Chuck and Rich, I don't know what your positions are, but I look at this question and it was confusing to me as a layperson, but once it's been explained, it's really not that confusing. That EMT should be omitted in front of ECA, but it seemed pretty clear. It said ECA only, and the other one has a separate category for EMT. So for me, the answer would have been 1200. Now, so I don't have a problem with the way, I think in the future they might want to get rid of it, but I don't think the question itself was really that confusing if you really looked at it and you understood what it said. For me, of course, because I didn't know what ECA meant, and I didn't, for me, it took me a minute to understand what the question meant. But if you actually understand the material, then this question wasn't that hard. And that's for me. So I don't know if you and Rich agree or disagree.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I can see that. I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure why the ECA portion is on, but I guess, I mean, yeah, it seems like they were testing the difference between the ECA and the EMT. It sounds like that's what they were testing. Like, hey, do you know the difference in pay between ECA and EMT? And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that exactly what the question was testing? Was knowing the difference between the ECA pay and the EMT pay?
Let me. This is Bruce. Bruce here, the consultant. Let me answer that. The question was just. It wasn't even looking at the ECA. It was the intent of the question was, if a firefighter is to receive EMT pay, how much is it annually? And that was it. And we felt like the description inside the table where it said ECA only was clearly made that an unviable or untenable choice. And that's why we still think it's a good question.
I have one comment just to advise the commission. Currently, Mr. Garcia has a 69. The next person up, the one that passed it, has 72. But based on seniority points, if Garcia gets it correct, he would move over the other gentleman. And that's just an informational thing, not for you to just knowledge.
Efren, can I have some clarification on that? Is that if we award the question to him, or is that if we omit the question?
Either, because we'll round it and it'll come out to a 69 point over a half, so it'll round to a 70. And because he has higher seniority points, he'll go higher. Of course, I think he's appealed several questions, so we still have to look at his 2 other questions, no matter what the result is on this, on what you folks may decide on this one.
And just my 2 cents too, even though the firefighter may be asking to award the question or omit the question, your choices are still either to do nothing, you know, to leave the question as is, and you can certify the list, or you can award, or you can omit. Even though they might be asking an award, you can still omit, or if they're asking for an omit, you can still award, depending if that's what you want to do. So those are basically your options.
For me, I mean, I'm willing to look at the next questions completely, independent of this, but for me, I'm fine with leaving as is the question. So I don't know if Chuck or Rich, if you have a different position, then make a motion.
I'm fine with moving the next question.
So since this is all 3 questions are one agenda item, we can make a motion. I would say let's do question 4379 and then come back, and then we can kind of grant in part, deny in part, or deny in full.
Okay, better. So the next is the question 43.
43. Make sure I've got it here. 43 is where he talks about how do you define the outer boundary of the cold zone if it's already in the cold zone, and which is what he listed there. And I guess I'll let Mr. Garcia explain this. I don't know if let me look if there's anything below that where that he may have included.
The material.
And all he put on here is number, I don't see anything, so we can let.
Did he put page 304?
It says page 304 under the cold zone.
Right, is that attached?
I don't see it attached here, but the test maker may have attached something. So,
Excuse me, I have the material here in front of me. I can flip my camera around.
okay.
Can I see the question again?
Wait, I think you just passed it. I thought I saw it.
Yeah, right a little bit below.
Down.
There's 43.
What incident scene control zone would you find witnesses and family members of the victims? Let me spin around. I'm sorry. Okay, page 304, cold zone. An immediate area surrounding the hot and warm zone may include the incident command post, rapid intervention crew, staging area of personnel and portable equipment. The outer boundary of the area would be the control line for the general public. And it says witnesses and family members of victims. This is under your cold zone. And here it says family, relatives of victims. They should be gently and firmly restrained from getting too close to the incident, kept some distance from the actual incident, but within the cold zone. The outer boundary is just an area, but you are in the cold zone.
Okay. And who was that speaking right now? Was that Evan?
I believe that was Mr. Garcia reading from his material.
Yeah, I was probably whispering or, yeah, that I read right now. This is.
Okay, no, that's fine. Mr. You're.
Sorry. Yeah, you're in the cold zone.
Right.
Mr. Yours on mute.
Wait.
I'm sorry. I'm having a problem with my mute button. Let's see. And under the cold zone, it's the sentence says the outer boundary of this area, referring to the cold zone, would be the control line for the general public. And this included witnesses and family members of the victims. And why we felt like this was a very pertinent question is the cold zone is, obviously there's an outer boundary, there's an inner boundary. And if you were to put somebody in the cold zone and they were to get right up against the warm zone, that just wouldn't be a very prudent thing on the fire ground. That's why in the book it talks about the outer boundary of this area, and you would want to keep them as far away from the warm zone within inside the cold zone. And like I say, we felt like this just came straight out of the book, and we were very confident that this question also was valid.
The question, I'm sorry, I gotta slide over. What does the question, where does it say? It says, in what zone will it be found?
There it is.
I gotta go back to the other screen.
Outer boundary of the cold zone is the correct answer.
It says incident scene control zone. What incident scene control zone would you find? It doesn't say what portion of the zone. It says what zone. Cold, warm, hot. It is the cold zone. As in the text where it says here, you're in the cold zone.
Is there any zone after the cold zone? In other words, I understand the inner boundary of the cold zone would be against the warm zone. So, but in my imagination here, you have the hot zone, and then the outer boundary of the hot zone would abut the inner boundary of the warm zone, I guess. And then the outer boundary of the warm zone would be adjacent to the inner boundary of the cold zone. And then I don't know what the outer boundary of the cold zone would be adjacent to. It sounds like the cold zone is the rest of the planet Earth, or is there something on the other side of the cold zone, opposite the warm zone?
Are you asking me or?
This is Evan Mann again. I'm also a fire instructor, and I teach at the HCSD Fire Academy. And this is something that is very particular. I understand the intent of the question and how it was. You could pull that exact answer out of outer boundary of the cold zone from the book, but essentially there are three zones, which are hot zone. Then it goes. It's like think of it as a bullseye. So you have the bullseye is the hot zone. That's where a hazardous materials incident is occurring, where you want your hazardous materials technicians to be working in, and then you have your decon areas and so forth that are on different zones. And so then you have your warm zone, which is would be like the second ring, and then you would have your cold zone. So the way the question reads, it very easily could be interpreted as the cold zone. And as a fire instructor, we don't refer to outer boundaries essentially. And so that's where that confusion in that question came about. So I would have to concur with our member Virgil Garcia that the cold zone, from an instructor standpoint, even would be an appropriate answer.
I see that. If it were me, Rich and Chuck, I would award. I wouldn't get rid of it, but I would award it because I'd say I understand the outer boundary of the cold zone is more precise to where, but I also agree with the firefighter. It's asking which zone. It doesn't say which part of the zone. It doesn't say where should, it is not more generic, where should they be? It says which zone, and cold zone is, to me, that makes sense. I understand what the question was asking in the intent, but I think from the person taking the exam, the question says what incident scene control zone. So I think that cold zone would also be correct, in my opinion. I don't know what you think.
Well, are we going to vote on each question individually right now? Or are we going
No, we're just discussing. We're just discussing.
Okay.
I'm just giving my opinion.
I think the gentleman makes a valid point that, you know, the outer boundary of the cold zone is the cold zone. So, I mean, I think he should get credit for the question.
Do we want to discuss it anymore, or do we want to go to the next portion before we vote on everything?
Fine, moving on to the next question.
Okay. So next one is 79.
Is 79 and trying to go back here just to make sure on 79 he tells us that possible answers for interpretation. That's what he wrote on there. And which is right there. And then we can go to what to whatever he attached. Let me look at that. And on there, he's got something that says question 79, and that's where he marked letter D, I guess. And I'll let him explain. You there, Virgin?
Yes, I'm sorry, couldn't get myself off mute. If you can go back, please, because I'm on my phone. If you can go back to the question itself that was asked. Right there. In reference to, okay. Correct answer is relevant contested matter. And I put all of the above. It does.
Can we see the answers, the options of the answers, so I know what we're talking about?
A and C.
Yeah.
I don't think I have them here unless they're on what Bruce responded.
They are, Efren.
Okay, so let's go to what.
There they are.
Okay.
Okay, if I can just point out A and B, the complainant deems to be pertinent, which that's what it said. And then relevant contested matter before to be contested matter before the commission. And then on the paper that I put in there, and it does also say on the letter L, it says to this end, parties shall be encouraged to stipulate as many uncontested factual or legal issues. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. It was D. Who is appealing the matter over it, which the Civil Service Commission has jurisdiction, may represent him or himself or may be represented by legal counsel. So when it says represented by legal counsel, to me is like lawyer. And I believe one of the answers was a lawyer also. Was the lawyer?
Right
Yeah,
there.
legal counsel.
Bruce?
All right. In this one, we took straight out of the Harlingen Civil Service rules, and this is to me is a clear-cut question as well, because it has to be, according to the rules, relevant to the matter. And answer A, it's whatever a complainant thinks should be entered is clearly not in the local rules. And also, it doesn't give an exception that says whatever the legal counsel wants to put in, they can put in. It's up to the commission. They're the sole authority on this, and their litmus test on this is it relevant to what's being heard? Not what the complainant nor what the complainant's legal counsel, but it has to be relevant according to the commission. So that's why we do believe that answer B is the only correct response on this. Because if not, then any legal representative could bring anything that they want in, whatever they decided, and that's clearly not the intent of the rules. It's what's relevant to the disciplinary hearing.
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
Okay, I understand that. And for it not being what the legal counsel, I've never done it, but I have heard people do it of where you go get a legal counsel, a lawyer for something, and they won't take your case because they don't feel it's relevant. So if my lawyer that I'm trying to get says it's relevant, then he'll take my case. But if it's not relevant, the lawyer's not going to take my case. So it should be relevant to my legal person, my lawyer.
Can I see the actual question again now? And then I think I need to see the rules.
From the source material, right?
Yes. But I need to see the actual question because it's saying what gets entered into evidence or what gets presented.
We could read the question out loud. Question 79, in reference to evidence in disciplinary hearings, the scope of evidence to be considered shall be limited to the factual matters. And then you've got the A, which is the complainant, what the evidence the complainant deems to be pertinent in his or her case, B, relevant to the contested matter before the commission, C, the complainant's legal counsel deems pertinent to his or her case, or D, all of the above.
I have a problem with the question. I as a lawyer, I'm not going to get in there and argue stuff that's completely. I guess I'm not sure that I understand that because yes, what's entered into evidence and what we actually consider would be only what is relevant. But if they deem it pertinent to their case, they can say it, we can dismiss it and say, okay, that wasn't relevant. So yes, it's only what's going to be relevant, but how do you enter it? How do you, the scope of it, or how do you consider it if you haven't heard it? And there's going to be a presumption that they're going to make an argument and we can say, okay, that's not, I guess you say they're saying that's not within scope of what's relevant. But I mean,
I think the way I read it, it seems the scope of evidence shall be limited to. So is the scope of evidence going to be limited to what the complainant deems pertinent? A, is the scope of evidence going to be that's going to be considered, is that going to be limited to what the complainant's legal counsel deems permanent? Because if it's limited to A or C, then what does the city get to present in their defense?
right, I guess. I mean, I could see where it would go. You would consider all of the above, but I mean, yes, ultimately it's only what is relevant to the contested matter before the commission. But how do you get there? I guess, I don't know. What do you think, Chuck? Rich?
Can I see what the source material says one more time?
Yeah. I think it's the other way around, other way. Oh, it is up here. I'm sorry.
Could you scroll down or to letter F and so you can't see and keep going. I'm sorry. you see that last part? I think is the last part. Is that it? There's no QRS or anything like that? Okay. So N is the only section. So, I mean, it looks like N is the only section that really kind of addresses this, in my opinion. And N is, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it seems like, I mean, obviously, I think that, you know, it makes sense that the trier of fact, which in this case would be the, you know, the board or the Civil Service Commission, would, you know, hear all relevant. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but obviously the Civil Service Commission is going to listen to anything it deems is relevant. And if facts are going to be limited to anything, the facts in no contested hearing could the facts be limited to one side or the other, or one side's lawyer or the other. Logically, if you're limiting facts, you can't limit them to the complainant. You can't limit them to the complainant's attorney. Logically, but the only thing I think that in the source material that really makes that makes that point is in section N, where it says the chairperson, presumably of the Civil Service Commission, would would oversee the questioning of witnesses and presentation of evidence as to effectively ascertain the truth, keep such presentations relevant to the issues to be determined. I mean, so section N, or paragraph N, kind of hints at, hey, it's the chairperson that determines what is relevant, and if you're going to limit anything, it's certainly not going to be limited by the complainant or the complainant's representation. It's going to be limited by the chairperson. But I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, I think that's only obvious to me because I've been in contested hearings, and so I don't want to put that my outside knowledge on the test taker. But yeah, to me, it's unfortunately very obvious that you cannot have the complainant or the complainant's attorney limiting the fact to what they deem relevant. But I'm not sure if N is strong enough to give. I mean, to me, that's I'm leaning on N, but that might just be because of my background. I mean, and I don't know if all of us are doing that.
Let me just say one thing on this one. The correct answer was B, and the other person that did pass the exam did get it right with the answer B, just for your information.
Evan Mann here again, the Harlingen Professional Firefighters president. And I think this is, I'm going to be devil's advocate here. So I think from a test maker standpoint that's right, that is correct, the scope of evidence, but reading more into the civil service rules and regulations, and from an attorney standpoint as well, there are times that you can allow, if it's requested in a timely manner, to have a subpoena, to have a witness, so who's to say that the other options in that question that Mr. Garcia put are not within that scope? So that's where it's tough. And I think it's, from a test maker standpoint, it was taken in context, but holistically, if you read everything, there's more to it than just that one context and asking that particular question in that particular format. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my issue is, yes, it's obviously that it's, relevant to the matter, but there's provisions within the rules that talk about the person as well as the attorney presenting information and rules of, evidence, and the rules and the scope of in which they can present it. So yes, obviously, ultimately, we're essentially the trier of fact, and we deem what's relevant and what's not relevant. But there's a lot mentioned about how they can present information. So I guess the question is, can they just present what they think is pertinent or only what is relevant, but they don't determine what is relevant, so they present what's pertinent for the commission to determine what is relevant. Chuck, Rich, any opinions?
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion about it.
I think think
Breaking up, Chuck.
in light of reviewing subsection N of the local rules, pretty straightforward. It says in reference to evidence in disciplinary actions or hearings, the scope of evidence to be considered shall be limited to factual matters. And then it's relevant to the contested matters before the commission. I think it's common sense. I mean, a person's feelings or their opinions, those are not facts. Those are what may have urged a person to act a way that they did, but that is certainly not a fact. So I think the question is clear. And I have to disagree with the appellant on this one. I think in light of what the local rules say and the answers, the possible answers given, B was the correct answer. So I disagree with the appellant on this one.
Okay, so do we want to go over the 3 questions and see how we feel about all 3 of them?
That's fine.
As for question 18, do we want to, my position is it should stand as is. I don't feel that we should change it. That's my position. I don't know about you two.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I don't think any action should be taken on question 18 either.
Okay. Question 43, I actually side with the appellant on that one.
But that should be awarded to the appellant. I agree.
Yeah.
Rich, okay. And then on question 79, Chuck and Rich, you both feel like B is correct, right?
No, I disagree with the appellant in this matter. I think that the only correct. I'm sorry. Okay, well then, that's my opinion.
Yeah, B is undoubtedly correct, and A is undoubtedly wrong. C is the only question is whether the test taker could get that from the source material. I don't have a strong opinion about it, to be honest.
I'd like to make a motion then that we affirm the appellant's appeal in part and deny in part, meaning awarding question 43 and denying question 18 and 79. Is there a second to that?
I'm taking that.
Any more discussion on it?
I don't need more discussion.
Let's take a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So we have awarded question 43 and taken no action as to 18 and 79.
That's correct.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay, now we're item 10, I guess.
Okay, item 10.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks for coming.
So now item 10 is consider and take action to approve the eligibility list resulting from the fire lieutenant promotional examination subject to possible recalculation.
Yes, and we will have to recalculate because now with Garcia will now be on the passing. So based on your instructions, we will modify this to indicate Garcia passing. And based on his 10 points, he will be above Jaime Gonzalez.
Do we need to wait to see that, or we can go ahead and make a motion?
Go ahead, Rebecca.
You can go ahead and make a motion and do that now.
Okay, I move that we approve the eligibility list as recalculated for the fire lieutenant promotional exam. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Item number 11 is considered an appeal by Sergeant Jose Luis Garcia of the police commander promotional examination administered on February 25th.
Okay, we can go down to that item. Is is this what he wrote, Sandra? Okay, here's his correspondence to us. Mr. Garcia is present. If you please to give us his side as we have this present on the screen.
Good afternoon, everybody. Regarding the first question, I'm appealing. The question asks specifically who is in charge of audio video recordings for the storage in the policy, and the two of the possibles were the Deputy Chief of Uniform Services Division and the Deputy Chief of Operations Bureau. Those are the same person. Throughout our policy, the Operations Bureau duty chief is listed as the person in charge of uniform services, highway unit, canines. Out of the entire 824-page policy, the only time that term, Uniform Services Division Deputy Chief, is used is in that specific subchapter. Two subchapters below it, it says the Deputy Chief of Operations Bureau or the designee shall review a randomly selected video. So to me, based on the experience I have here at the department, knowing we do not have a specified term of the duty chief, Deputy Chief of Uniform Services, I put Operations Deputy Chief. Even John Parrish, Commander Parrish, who wrote the policy, said it's the same person. So I put the answer that I felt was correct based on being in the highway unit, and my deputy chief was the operations deputy chief at the time. I put operations, which was counted wrong on the test, but I'm based on the fact that they're both the same person. I think both should be correct.
And on this one, we do have another sergeant who will want to participate in the public comments. I can either bring him in now or after we're through with the item. So just let me know what your wishes are.
I'm fine with him coming in now, but I don't know how you feel. This is for this, it's relevant to this you're talking about?
He wanted to talk about this item. Not necessarily this question. I'm not sure which question he wants to address, but he wanted to speak on this item.
Okay, Rich, Chuck, do you have any feelings?
No, I don't have a problem with that.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, let him in.
I do have a question for the appellant though. Sir, are you asking that we just omit this question, or are you asking that you be given credit for the question?
I'm asking for credit. Both are correct since they're both in the policy.
And do we know how this is going to affect any other applicants that have taken the exam?
No, sir. If they got it wrong, they'll get a point. If they got it right, they should remain where they're at. I'm not trying to bring anybody down below passing. I'm just trying to get my point to pass.
Okay,
Okay.
on this one, the other applicant did get it, the other test taker did get it right. And the second test taker that also passed got a wrong answer. But if you'd like me to bring in the
Yeah, bring in the other person.
call him in, this one will be by phone, so it'll take a minute here to get it going.
Your call has been forwarded.
It's not answering, but we'll try later during the same item if you'd like.
Can you move this screen just a teeny bit? I want to read the rest of what's on there.
Or
Can we see what the test taker's response to this was?
Baker.
Unknown caller.
Is Hector Leal also the deputy chief of operations?
Yes, he is the Deputy Chief of Operations. As a matter of fact, on his door, it says Operations Deputy Chief, the placard on his door. And under the succession of command, it lists the 3 duty chiefs by their title, and it's Support Services Duty Chief, Criminal Investigations Duty Chief, and Operations Duty, Deputy Chiefs. So nowhere in our succession of command is there a listing of a Uniform Services Deputy Chief.
This is kind of hard without being able to flip through pages and see it all in front of me.
I'd send you the policy, man, but it's 824 pages. It would take a bit to get there.
I'll wait. Just kidding.
And I think that's one of the issues that I was discussing with my counterparts is this policy, when it was developed over a course of about 3 or 4 years with our previous administrator, with Chief Addicts. And a lot of these policies were adopted from Austin, and some of the terminology was not changed because of their haste to push the policy out. And there's a lot of mistakes in the policy. The policy contradicts itself numerous places. It contradicts state law. It contradicts CCP. And some of these typos, which we think are typos, where they name it as a operations or a uniform services deputy chief, we believe that term comes from Austin because we've never had that. As far as I know, we've never had that term. And nowhere in the 824 pages is that term listed other than that one paragraph. Everywhere else, over 20 times, it's listed as operations deputy chief.
Is there anyone from the police department here today that can comment on the fact that the person who reviews the audio and video recordings is the deputy chief of operations, or no, it's the deputy chief of uniform services? Is there anybody?
We have the assistant police chief on the call.
Would the assistant police chief want to comment on that?
Hello, everybody. My name is Miriam Anderson. I'm the assistant chief. Okay, so based on the policy, the information provided by Sergeant Garcia is correct. We always revert back to what is in writing. The only place that I see, and I'm also checking, as far as somebody being called operation chief, is that placard that is attached to the wall outside the deputy chief's layout's door.
But it's your policy that the deputy chief of operations reviews the audio and video recordings?
Yes, well, yes, but I believe Sergeant Garcia's comment is the confusion between, is he the deputy chief of uniform services or the deputy chief of operations? Sergeant Garcia.
Yes.
Did you in any other part of the policy find that title of deputy chief of uniform services?
No, ma'am. As a matter of fact, subsection A on chapter 314.9, which is where this test question came from, subsection A lists deputy chief of uniform services. Subsection C says the deputy chief of the operations bureau or their designees shall review randomly selected sampling of video audio recordings made recently by officers employed by the department. So right there it says that the operations bureau duty chief is the one who actually reviews the video.
So do y'all have within the department a deputy chief of uniform services?
Don't mind, I can chime in here. Sorry, it's Chief Kester. I'm on my last day of vacation, but I was listening in. Make it simple for you. The uniform deputy chief and the operations deputy chief are one and the same.
I've heard enough, then I'm ready to move on to the next question. That answers the question.
Me too.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. I move that,
Well, we just go to the next question because there's 2 and 1 like the last time.
All right.
So let's go to the next question and then come back.
Okay. The second question is the CCP question regarding the body cavity searches during a traffic stop. The answer that I listed, I don't recall the exact verbatim the answer bank, but I believe I put that they will not be done during the traffic stop. And CCP does specifically say that you need a search warrant. The search warrant was one of the answers, but reverting back to all the extensive other source material we had, reading our policy, we're not going to conduct a body cavity search during a traffic stop. Our policy states over and over that it's going to be done with in a private area with a physician, as our policy states. And the only reason I'm kind of challenging this question is based on the volume of source material, it gets kind of confusing as to who's asking what. And reverting back to the CCP, it does say that. But that's the reason I'm challenging, is just based on the fact that our policy kind of contradicts it and says, you know, you're not going to do a body cavity search during a traffic stop. I've done search warrants before. I know how long it takes to prepare a search warrant and get it signed. By the time we find a physician, you're not going to keep someone detained on the side of the road and then do a body cavity search like DPS did and then be all over YouTube. So CCP's this specifically stated, but I'm basing it on the fact what our policy says, coinciding with the CCP. So I don't know if, in a nutshell, if that's an explanation enough.
Can I go back to the question?
Yes. The question.
The question and the answers. I just want to see them together.
I'm sure if Efren can get the exact answer or the question and the answer bank.
It's right there.
I put D. None of the answers are correct.
Chuck, Rich?
Yeah, I think, you know, that's an excellent explanation. I mean, that is a very tricky point, but it's a very interesting point that do you conduct, I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but do you conduct a body cavity search at a traffic stop? And his answer is no. And I don't see any practicality. I mean, I think that's a very good answer. Of course not. Yeah, like you said, you're not going to do it at a traffic stop. And then the other question is, you know, well, you know, at a traffic stop, how would you get to a body cavity search? Well, you'd have to get a search warrant. And it's a very, you know, it's a very nitpicky point that he makes, but it's a great point. Yeah, if you have a traffic stop and then you go to get a search warrant, at some point it's no longer a traffic stop. So I mean, it's very tricky, but it's a very interesting point. I mean, I don't think he got that answer. I don't think he got that question wrong because of a lack of understanding of the law. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he didn't, you know, it sounds like he, you know, if anything, he may have put too much thought into it, into that question, which
yeah, I could see where you could get C being from the books the correct answer, but as a citizen, I'm going with D. I mean, I agree with you. I don't want to see that on YouTube. I don't, not from my local law enforcement. So I don't know. Yes, technically from the literature, if you dig to that, but if you take it in, wow, I don't know. Chuck, you come from a different perspective than we do. So what is your thoughts?
Well, I'm looking at the way the question is worded, and it says a peace officer may not conduct a body cavity search of a person during a traffic stop unless, and from reading it, the only possible answer, and again, I'm coming from a prosecutor's,
right.
The only correct answer is C. The officer first obtains a search warrant. But I understand, like Richard and you, what this officer is saying. I mean, the practicality of going to go get a search warrant while you got a guy on the side of the road, it's very rarely ever going to happen that way. But that is what the law is. You cannot conduct one without a valid search warrant. So, I mean...
And if you, for some miracle, have the valid search warrant, and although it's not practical and it would be a really bad idea, it would fall into the unless.
No one ever said all laws are good. I mean, I'm just saying that the way that this is written, you know, the way that this question is couched, I think the only possible correct answer is C. And, you know, that's from, you know, working with police officers and working with the confines of search and seizure laws. And see, D is not correct because C is absolutely correct. You understand what I'm saying? When I read that question, D, I would eliminate D because C is a correct answer. Do y'all understand what I'm saying there? I mean, I just, but
I don't like it, but I kind of agree with you.
We do have that other gentleman that wanted to participate and he's available. It's on this question that he wanted to comment.
Okay.
If you'd like, I can put him on the
Yeah.
line.
Put him on. Who is it? What's
Sergeant Danny Flores.
Okay.
Sergeant Flores, if you want to address the commission, you can at this point.
Yes. On the question 57, I am going by the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 18.24, specifically says that you need a warrant. So as the other commission members have stated, C would be the only answer. And that is my 2 cents in this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we want, okay, so then we need to discuss the 2 questions together.
Efren, this is Bruce here. May I weigh in on this particular question?
Chairman? Abby?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The sergeant brings up a valid point about, you know, they have a policy, but and that's why when questions are written, that's why we identify the exact source because of scenarios just like this, because it would be impossible for us to write a question and then have to validate it through, as the sergeant said, over 800 pages of policy. And so though it may not be applicable to policy, it doesn't negate the validity of this question, because in our position, we identified Texas Code of Criminal Procedures 18.24, and the only correct response according to that is answer C. Now, if this question were identified coming out of the policy manual, it would be invalid. But you know, based on that, and we understand 800 pages, and however, the question is literally taken directly out of the Code of Criminal Procedures, which was on the reading list.
I think one of the main issues I have with the question, Bruce, is and it's in the CCP, is the word during a traffic stop. I would never, and I don't know any officer except DPS 10 years ago that would conduct a body cavity search during a traffic stop. And I think that's where I kind of thought maybe not that was a trick question, but I was looking at that specific word is during, because I would never do one during. I don't know any officer that would do it during either. So I think that was the whole reason for the challenge, is the not where it came from, and not that it wasn't listed, it was from CCP itself, but the actual word during a traffic stop. I don't know who would do it.
Yes, I understand. I really do.
Yeah, I see that. I also think, though, that the way the question's worded, there is only one answer, and it's C. But I commend you for your position, because I agree with that. As a good officer, you would never do it.
Okay.
Officer, I mean, I want to give you that. Do you want to withdraw this question from appeal? I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not going to vote for your interpretation of it, but I think after it's been explained, I mean, this was specifically written to Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 18.24. And I mean, I would give you the opportunity to withdraw that appeal if you want. I mean, it sounds to me like you're going to win the first question.
Well, I'll withdraw it. If I think I can get away with the first one, I'll withdraw it. Yeah, I'm a lot stronger viewed on the first question than this one.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. You'd be batting 1,000. Let's put it that way. Okay.
Okay, I withdraw it.
At least in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I'll withdraw it.
So having withdrawn question number 57, then we go back to review question number 5. And is there a motion regarding the appeal of Sergeant Jose Luis Garcia?
I move that we affirm the appeal filed by Sergeant Garcia based on the explanation given by the applicant and the appellant and Deputy Chief Miriam Garcia and I'm sorry, Miriam Hernandez and the chief.
And in so doing, give him credit for the question? Is that part of your?
Yeah. I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. Yes, give him credit for that question.
Is there a second?
Some clarification before this.
Oh, good.
So do we also count D, which was the correct answer, correct? So we're counting both D and B correct. Is that what? So I can have some direction here.
I believe so. What do you think, Rick? I mean, Chuck, is that what you meant?
I think based on the explanation given by the chief, yes. I mean, I think that's the only possible way to grade that question.
So is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we affirm the appeal.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
As to question 5, correct.
All right.
Okay, number 12 is consider and take action to approve the eligibility list resulting from the police commander examination, now with a possible recalculation, or with a recalculation, correct?
That is correct. With this recalculation, Garcia will have a 70, so he'll be added on that list, and he'll also with his seniority points, and we'll adjust the score based on your instructions, on your action.
And that will put him at an 80?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I move to approve the eligibility list for the police commander promotional examination as recalculated. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Rich?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Sorry. Aye.
Okay, motion carries. So number 13 is considered an appeal by Commander Raimundo Cavazos of the Deputy Police Chief examination administered on February 26.
If we could go to that one, please. And on, you show what he wrote. And on this one, I guess Cavazos is online, so why don't we have him explain what he's appealing? Ray?
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing me out. The concern and the appeal that I have for these questions, and I know there's a lot of them, is the fact that I feel that they violate Rule 19 of our civil service rules, where it says the examination materials shall be selected with the intention that the examination will fully and fairly test the qualified applicants as to their relative suitability to discharge the duties of the position for which the test is being conducted. So based on the sheer volume of material that we have, I mean, the very first thing I read was the civil service rules. And then afterwards, I went through all the material. So as I'm reading through the material, a lot of stuff didn't have to do with me, as far as not just being a police officer or not just being a deputy chief, but being a police officer at all. So I didn't study those things. I cut out all the fluff as it is. and I concentrated all of my studying based on what has to do with the department and what has to do with my job. And on some of the questions, and I only could remember the 3 questions. I couldn't write the actual questions down. I feel that these questions have nothing to do with being with my job, in essence. So that's where I'm coming from.
And we're going to look at the specific questions, I guess.
Well, there's 8 of them. There's 8 questions but if we can look at each one, that'd be great.
$51. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, how many questions was this exam?
100.
100 questions.
So you're questioning just under 10% of the exam?
Yes, sir.
And just so clarify this for myself, you're not asking to be given credit for these answers. You're just asking to omit these questions from the test.
Correct, sir.
Did you get any of these answers correct?
No.
Okay.
So I didn't study them. I skipped all
that. I'm asking you that question not facetiously, because you may make the same argument and got the answer correct. I doubt that you would be here appealing it, but there may be other guys that took the exam, and I don't know how many people took it with you.
There's just 2 of us.
There was 2? Okay.
Just me and one other person.
Alrighty.
And he got a 62. I got a 64.
Counselor, our counselor, I don't see you on my screen. You're still here, right?
Yes.
I guess my question is this. Should this not have been maybe a challenge when the source material was being approved versus an exam issue? I don't know.
You mean like kind of like at at the testing, approving like the test taker stuff? Well, I mean, I guess you can look at each question and determine whether or not you think it's relevant to a deputy chief, and get input from the chief of police, and Chief Anderson as well. I mean, I just looking at the questions themselves, there's a lot of questions that refer to the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. And some of these questions are going to be different than what you might see as a patrol officer, sergeant, or a lieutenant, because he's going to be at a much higher level. he or she would be at a much higher level position in having to advise and guide the lower level ranks. So, I mean, on the face of what I'm looking at, they seem pretty relevant to me in terms of being in a leadership role, but it's up to y'all.
Like, I see question 90 in front of me as relevant. I know it sounds strange because it's about New York, but the thing is, you don't live in a vacuum either. And if somebody did something that was effective and helpful, then we should be learning from that. And so I think that that's why that question becomes relevant.
Correct.
That's just that one question. I don't know.
Learning
about,
from other departments and learning how they've effectively done things in other departments or other states would make it relevant in that leadership role of deputy chief.
So for me, 90, for me personally, 90 seems relevant. I don't know about Chuck, Rich.
May I, on a couple of responses to that, may I respond?
Sure.
Well, as I was an acting deputy chief for almost a year, 8 months for a while, and then another 3 months later on. When it comes to when I talk about CCP, never in that time would I have encountered or did I encounter anything from CCP as far as who, like question 52, who may administer oaths. I never dealt with any of that. When it comes to people coming or going to medical facilities and what the medical personnel would do, that's never come across my desk either. That's a different profession. When it comes to the leadership roles that a deputy chief would take and any type of advice that I would give, whether it be a commander or sergeant or patrol officer, none of those had ever come across my desk. Or had I ever seen it come across any of my other colleagues' desks whenever when I was in the deputy chief role. As far as the question number 90, when it comes to CompStat, if you were to ask me about CompStat, I can tell you exactly what it's all about, and how to, and I could even use it in any one of our divisions to effectively run the department. But as a citizen, and if you ask a citizen, well, what would be more relevant to them, knowing how to do it or something that happened in New York City 2 decades ago? Trying to find the relevance for that it's a little hard for me because it doesn't matter what happened there as long as I know how to run it here. Because that's the whole point. Is it's trying to find an obscure passage or a random stat versus me knowing how to actually use what they're trying to teach us in this book. I think are 2 different animals. And I know how to run CompStat. I've done it. I mean, I know exactly what we do. We've been running CompStat in this department for at least 3 or 4 years now.
Okay.
Madam Chairperson, may I weigh in?
Yes.
And I'm going to give you a very respectful opposing viewpoint on this. Regarding the broken windows book, the CompStat or the CompStat book is generally was developed in New York, and that's why they use an awful lot of the examples up there. The other part is what's concerning is trying to tie this into to specific tasks in a particular job description would require you as a commission to make sure that you do a task analysis prior to any and all tests that are going to be delivered or written. In that way that the test maker can balance off the task analysis to make sure that this is specifically within each of the in each of the job descriptions. And that's, quite frankly, we've been doing this for 30 years, and that would be very impractical and extremely costly for you. Our position is if the reading list comes out, for instance, Code of Criminal Procedures, well, that's on the reading list. And because there were 3 different, there was a sergeant, commander, and deputy chief exams that were written, we tried to pull the higher level questions from, for example, from the Code of Criminal Procedures for this particular exam because of the high level of it. Now, it's very difficult to write a test and say that this question is going to tie into your task number 12, because it's just an all-encompassing cognitive knowledge is what we're trying to test here, not balance it off the job description, because clearly that would be virtually impossible to do that. And each and every test that you would be giving would require you to go in and justify question number 2 goes to this particular task analysis that shows that this person does this. And it's just not very practical. Though I understand where the appellant is coming from, we strongly disagree with the position. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, may I please respond to that? As far as that? Well, question 19A, or the Civil Service Rule 19A, where it says the examination shall be, material should be selected with the intention that the examination will be fully and fairly tested, as I stated before. This comes from section 143, and that's I know we are using different civil service rules, but they're not exactly different. The civil service rules they modified them a little bit for our area, and this is what was agreed upon. This is agreement, if I'm not mistaken, from the Civil Service Commission, with the state. Is that not correct? I mean, I'm trying to, but in section 143, it says specifically the examination questions must test the knowledge of the eligible promotional candidates about the information and facts, and must be based on, one, the duties of the position for which the examination is held. So I understand where Mr. Yuri is coming from. However, the cost effectiveness and whether or not it's practical or not, that almost shouldn't be a factor, because that it takes a cavalier attitude towards somebody else's career. I'm trying to show what's fair and what's not being fair. I mean, respectively to Mr. Yuri and his group, I'm trying to make sure that if we're going to be held to the rules that say that we have to report ourselves in some way, that the test should have to follow the same rules. And as far as the analysis for the job description of a deputy chief, it's in our policy. The job description is in our policy. There's really no analysis has to be done. It's already in our policy what the job description is for deputy chief. I mean, again, there some of the questions that I'm arguing here came out of the family code, I believe, and one of them being I want to say with the one that had to do with the medical personnel that came out of the family code, I believe. And the family code, from what I understand, and Mr. Yuri had a conversation with John Parrish that he didn't know why the family code wasn't even in the source material, because it had nothing to do with the deputy chief position.
Okay, I hear both positions, and I do think it'd be very onerous on us to go through and try to make a subjective decision as to what's relevant to a particular position. And I don't think that we're really in a position to determine what is relevant to that job, because if it's in the source material, you essentially made a judgment call that these things aren't going to be relevant to me, thus I don't need to study them, as opposed to challenging why they're there in the first place. And I don't know what the mechanism for challenging why they were there in the first place would be, but
so would there be some type of instruction that was given to the test maker from the HR director?
So,
as far as what would there be?
So let me explain 143, and then we also have the collective bargaining agreement along with the Civil Service Commission rules. So 143 under the collective. So the first thing we look at would be the collective bargaining agreement with the police department, because anything that we put in the police department is going to override 143 or would default to 143, right? So section 3 of Article 8 promotions talks about deputy chiefs, commanders, and sergeants. So basically it says the city shall fill vacancy in the rank of deputy chief, commanders, and sergeant using the statutory promotional mechanisms provided in Chapter 143, except as follows. And then there's like some exceptions to having like an oral board, et cetera, et cetera. But Section B in here, it's specifically, it's kind of vague. In addition, and I think on purpose because of the leadership roles of deputy chief, commanders, and sergeants, in addition to the usual and customary testing system, the city shall utilize an assessment process to further evaluate eligible candidates for the supervisory functions performed by the deputy chiefs, commanders, and sergeants. So the collective bargaining agreement seems to give them a little more leeway. And then under 143, the rule that is being referred to here by the appellant, 143.032, the examination question must test the knowledge of the eligible promotional candidate about information and facts and must be based on duties of the position. So it lists three things: duties of the position, material that is reasonably current, and any study course given by the departmental school of instruction. So it doesn't limit the city's ability to provide, whatever it wants to use as a source material. In terms of appeal, it's also pretty vague. It doesn't say it has to be limited to whether it's kind of poorly worded or anything. It just basically says that they have the right to appeal to the commission. So if relevance is something he wants to argue, it appears it's something you can analyze. So.
And to that though, as far as the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, that was made for the oral boards that are to be conducted after this. If let's say if there's two applicants that pass, that's what that was for, was so we can have the actual oral boards. Because at one time, I guess in 143, where it has the examination must be entirely in writing and may not be in any part consist of an oral interview. The part that you were talking about had to do with the oral boards. That's that way we can have oral boards after the written test.
And the collective bargaining overrides the fact that we can't have an oral board.
Correct. Yes, I'm not disputing that one at all. I'm totally good with the oral boards.
So Rich, Chuck, how do you want to address or review this?
Are all of the questions being challenged on that same basis, or is there some other reason for any of the individual questions?
It's all on the same basis. Again, parts that have nothing to do with being a deputy chief or even a police officer for that matter. And what an officer would do if confronted, like who may administer oaths in question 52 states that the district and county attorneys are authorized to administer oaths. That has nothing to do with being a police officer, much less a deputy chief. Now, I've been a police officer for 28 years, and I've never had to even advise somebody of who can, go to this person because they can administer an oath.
And this is 10 questions?
Eight questions.
8 questions. And your score was a 64 out of 100?
Yes, sir.
Well, the appellant is not asking to be given credit for an answer that he thought was correct. He's just asking that all 8 questions be omitted on the grounds that it's not something he needs to know in his role as a police officer or as the deputy chief. So I think the easiest way to address it is to just read each question, and then we'll make a decision whether or not we think it's relevant to his duties as a deputy chief.
Yeah, I agree. And I would also point out that so he needs all 8 of those to be omitted in order for him to get to the 70% pass. It looks like so. If you got a 64 out of 100, you subtract 8 from 100, that gives you 92. 64 divided by 92 gives you 69.56. So, so 69.56 would be rounded up to 70. So, I hate to, to prejudice the analysis, but I would say the very first question that we determine is relevant to the job would make the rest of them moot, because you would need all 8 to be omitted in order for his score to become a passing score, as far as I can tell by the math I've just done.
That's right.
Is that the math? Is that the math that you've seen as well?
Yes, sir.
I have to say that as far as I'm concerned, question 51 is relevant because it's a criminal procedure code. And I would think the deputy chief would have to know, how does a complaint, how does it happen? Even if he's not the one that does it, because he might just say, well, we've got a complaint, let's go make the arrest. And they've got to know the order and the process in which a complaint proceeds and what's a valid complaint upon which you can make the arrest. And I don't know, I just think it's relevant.
Well, I know the complaint process here in our department. I don't know what the complaint process is for a district attorney. I'm not a district attorney, and I've never been in the office. Because asking what a district attorney should do. I know if somebody would come to this office and want to make a complaint, I know exactly what to do and how to proceed. It's whatever a district attorney, and I've never been there. I don't know what a district attorney's responsibilities and what their job description is. I don't know, because again, they're asking about a district attorney, not a police officer. And what we would do here in our department, and I know exactly what we would do here. I've been doing this for 28 years.
I could be wrong, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the word complaint in question 51 is a term of art related, not just like a general complaint from the public, but like an actual the starting of a legal proceeding in which a complaint is made to a county attorney or district attorney. And I mean, again, I don't mean to sound, I don't mean to sound harsh, but it seems like the initiating of a legal proceeding with a district attorney, and that seems like it would be very relevant on how that goes about, because it seems like your police officers that you're supervising would need to know that, and I would guess that you would need to be able to train them and explain that to them. I would imagine that's the thrust of the question is, hey, how do you go from what happens once a complaint is made, meaning one of your officers swears out a complaint to a attorney, and then and then what does the district attorney have to do at that point, or what should he do according to the Texas code? I mean, that seems extremely relevant to the job of a supervisor in a police department.
But if someone were to come to the Harlingen Police Department and say, I have this complaint, we would get the complaint. We would do our part, and which was we would get all the information, which is already reduced to writing, and then we would get this, and we take this before a judge, and that's how we would do it.
Right,
Again,
but I
don't
see
know
it
what
as,
they would do over there.
I still see it as relevant because you don't know, but it's in the source material, so you could have known. So the idea is, no, you don't have to do their job and you don't have to know everything they do. But if it touches on your job and if it's in the source material, then you have access to that information, and it would be something that you should know in your position because you're high up administrative. And I guess that, I don't know, I see it as relevant. I understand your position, but I do see it as relevant. Chuck?
I think it's relevant to your duties and job as a deputy chief. I mean, are you not responsible for training up your rookie officers?
No, we have FTOs for that. We have FTOs that we put in.
So as a deputy, but as a deputy chief, you're telling me you're not responsible for the rank and file people under you, that they're doing their job correctly and that they're doing things the way they have been taught or should have been taught to do.
Okay, so
Are
are we
you
talking
saying
about
that?
are we talking about being responsible for the entire process or being responsible for the actual teaching and what goes in the FTO program? Because
Have you,
as
let me ask you this, sir. Before
Yes, sir.
before you took this test,
Mhm.
you are a licensed peace officer in the state of Texas. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you got your certifications on file with the proper authorities, TCLOS?
Yes.
Okay. So have you ever filed or filled out a sworn complaint before a magistrate judge to get an
Yes.
arrest warrant? Have you ever done anything like that? Okay, well, that's my point. That there's a degree of knowledge that you need to have, even though it may not be exactly relevant to your position at the time. It's something that you need to have knowledge of. And I do think this is relevant to your position. I mean, I apologize, and I see where you're coming from. I just respectfully, I disagree with you, and that's my answer to question number 51.
And Rich, you're in agreement with that?
Yeah, and I hate to cheat, but I think that would be my answer on question 52 as well. But yeah, for sure on 51.
Me too.
Well, I make a motion that we forego the rest of the analysis because it becomes moot. You would need it becomes mathematically impossible at this point for this to have any relevance because you can't now get a passing score because the first one and that's not to say that like I said I read ahead a little and it looks like there's others that I would find relevant as well. Not that my vote's the only one that counts, but I would move that we resolve this matter at this point because it's mathematically impossible for him to get a passing score now that we found that first question is relevant to his duties.
So is the motion to deny the appeal?
Yes, the motion is to deny the appeal.
And is there a second?
Second.
Do we want any further discussion or are we ready to move on to the vote?
Ready to vote?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to deny the appeal in number 13?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. So number 14 would be consider and take action to approve the eligibility list resulting from the deputy chief examination administered February 26. Is there a list now?
There would be a list, but somebody passed the exam. We will at a later date schedule another exam.
So here you would take no action.
Oh, okay. Well, no action then. Is there any other matter?
Not for me.
Seeing none, number 15, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. We can now go offline.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.